The silent departure, the grand assembly hall of the Galactic Trade Federation stretched beyond the horizon, its crystalline walls reflecting the light of 1,000 stars. Representatives from 47 different species filled the vast chamber, their voices creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, and harmonic tones that somehow merged into the universal translator's steady hum. At the center of this magnificent structure sat the High Council, their elevated platform giving them a perfect view of the delegation floors below. Ambassador Sarah Chen adjusted her simple black suit and checked her chronometer. In 30 minutes, humanity would either join the galactic community or face another century of isolation. Beside her, General Marcus Stone sat perfectly still, his weathered hands folded in his lap, while Dr. Elena Vasquez quietly reviewed her datapad one final time. They represented not just Earth, but the hopes of 8 billion humans who had been watching the stars for generations. Chancellor Zix of the Hegemony called the session to order, his towering frame casting long shadows across the assembly floor. The Hegemony controlled the largest sector of known space, and his word carried weight that could shift the balance of entire civilizations. His 4 eyes surveyed the chamber with the confidence of someone who had never been challenged, never been wrong, and never been afraid. We gather today to consider the application of species 7834, commonly known as humanity, for membership in the Galactic Trade Federation. Chancellor Zix announced, his voice carrying the authority of millennia. Their representative world, designated as Earth, has submitted the required documentation and cultural assessments. We shall now hear testimonies regarding their worthiness. The first to rise was Councillor Viridian of the Aquatic Collective, her translucent form shimmering as she spoke. The humans show promise in certain areas, but their history concerns us deeply. They have fought over 14,000 documented wars in their recorded history. They have poisoned their own atmosphere, eliminated thousands of their own species, and developed weapons capable of destroying their entire planet. How can we trust a species that cannot even protect its own home? A ripple of agreement flowed through the chamber. Several species made their characteristic sounds of approval, creating a discordant chorus that seemed to echo off the walls and press down on the human delegation. Sarah felt the weight of their judgment, but maintained her composure. This was expected. They had prepared for this moment for decades. Representative Korthok of the Silicon Confederacy stood next, his metallic voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. Furthermore, humans show an alarming tendency toward individual thought over collective harmony. Their inability to achieve global unity after centuries of development suggests a fundamental flaw in their social evolution. They celebrate competition over cooperation, progress over stability. Such traits have no place in our peaceful federation. The chamber erupted in what could only be described as laughter, though it came in forms humanity had never heard before. The hegemony's deep, resonant booms mixed with the high-pitched trills of the aerial dancers and the rhythmic clicking of the Hive Collective. It was the sound of 47 species finding the idea of human membership amusing, perhaps even absurd. General Stone's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but he said nothing. Dr. Vasquez closed her datapad with a soft click. Ambassador Chen simply watched, her expression neutral, as if she were observing a fascinating cultural display rather than her species. Public humiliation. Councillor Thrain of the Peaceful Remnant, one of the few species to have achieved true pacifism, spoke with a voice like gentle rain. Perhaps we judge too harshly. Every species has struggled with violence in their early development. The question is whether humanity has learned from their mistakes and can contribute positively to our community. But Chancellor Zix raised one of his massive hands, silencing the discussion. The evidence is clear. Humanity requests membership while their planet still suffers from the consequences of their own actions. They seek trade agreements while maintaining military forces. They speak of peace while their entertainment glorifies conflict. This is not the behavior of a species ready for galactic citizenship. The vote was swift and decisive. 45 species voted against admission. Only Councillor Thrain and the representative from the neutral zones abstained. The chamber fell silent as Chancellor Zix prepared to deliver the formal verdict. By the authority vested in this council by the Galactic Trade Federation Charter, humanity's application for membership is hereby rejected. Furthermore, they are prohibited from reapplying for a period of 100 standard years. During this time, they may engage in limited trade with approved species under strict supervision, but they are forbidden from establishing colonies beyond their home system or accessing protected technologies. The finality of the decision settled over the chamber like a heavy blanket. Some species began to file out, their business concluded. Others remained to witness humanity's response. Curious to see how this young species would react to such comprehensive rejection, Ambassador Chen stood slowly, her movements deliberate and graceful. General Stone and Dr. Vasquez followed her lead, rising in perfect synchronization. The chamber grew quiet, expecting protests, arguments, or perhaps desperate pleas for reconsideration. Instead, they were met with something far more unsettling: complete silence. Sarah Chen looked directly at Chancellor Zix, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that seemed to reach across the vast distance between them. She said nothing. No threats, no promises, no emotional outbursts. She simply observed him with the same calm attention she had shown throughout the entire proceedings. General Stone checked his chronometer and nodded once to his companions. Without a word, the three humans turned and began walking toward the exit. Their footsteps echoed in the sudden quiet, each step measured and purposeful. They passed rows of alien representatives, some of whom leaned forward to get a better look at these strange beings who had accepted their rejection with such eerie composure. As they reached the great doors of the assembly hall, Ambassador Chen paused. She turned back to face the chamber, her gaze sweeping across the assembled species with the same careful attention she had shown throughout the day. Then, without speaking, she inclined her head in a gesture that might have been respect or farewell, or perhaps something else entirely. The doors closed behind them with a soft hiss, leaving the chamber in absolute silence. It was Councillor Thrain who finally spoke, his voice carrying clearly in the quiet hall. I have observed many species face rejection, but I have never seen such dignity in defeat. There was no defeat in their eyes, only patience. Chancellor Zix dismissed the observation with a wave of his hand. Humans are simply too primitive to understand the magnitude of their failure. They will return to their small world and continue their petty conflicts while we advance without them. In 100 years, we will see if they have learned to be civilized. But as the council dispersed and the various species returned to their ships, many carried with them a strange unease. They had expected anger, desperation, or at least disappointment. Instead, they had witnessed something none of them could quite identify: a species that had listened to their judgment, accepted their decision, and walked away with their dignity intact. The human delegation's ship departed from the Federation's Capital Station 3 hours later, following standard protocols and requesting no special considerations. Their final transmission was brief and professional. Earth delegation returning home. Thank you for your time and consideration. What none of the alien species knew was that deep in the ship's secure communication array, a single coded message had been transmitted to Earth the moment the vote was concluded. 3 words that would change everything. Protocol 7 authorized. On Earth, in a bunker buried beneath the Rocky Mountains, Admiral Rebecca Torres received the message and activated systems that had been waiting in silence for this exact moment. Across the planet, similar facilities came online, their purpose known only to a select few, who had spent decades preparing for this possibility. The galaxy had made its choice. Now it would discover that humanity had been making choices of their own, choices that would soon become impossible to ignore. But that revelation would come later, in the quiet months ahead, when the absence of human voices would become more telling than any words they might have spoken. For now, the 3 humans sat in their ship's observation deck, watching the stars wheel past in their ancient patterns. They had done exactly what they came to do, though the galaxy would not understand that for some time yet. How long do you think it will take them to figure it out? Dr. Vasquez asked, breaking the silence for the first time since they had left. The assembly hall. General Stone considered the question carefully. 6 months, maybe 8. The hegemony will be the last to understand. They've been comfortable for too long. Ambassador Chen nodded, her eyes still fixed on the stars. They wanted to see if we were civilized. I think they'll find that we are, just not in the way they expected. The ship continued its journey toward Earth, carrying with it the seeds of change that would soon transform not just humanity's place in the galaxy, but the galaxy itself. Asterisk. Sarah Chen stood, and this time she spoke. Honored counselors, 6 months ago, you evaluated humanity's worthiness for membership in the Galactic Trade Federation. You found us lacking in the qualities you deemed necessary for galactic citizenship. We accepted your judgment and returned to our home system. Her voice carried clearly through the chamber, calm and professional, but with an undertone that suggested this was not the same person who had left in silence. During these months, we have had time to reflect on your concerns. You criticized our history of conflict, our environmental challenges, and our tendency toward independent action. You saw these as weaknesses, as signs of a primitive species, unfit for galactic society. She paused, letting her words settle over the chamber like a gentle rain that might turn into a storm. We have come to understand that these experiences, which you viewed as failings, have given us capabilities that our isolation allowed us to develop without interference. While the galaxy achieved peace through cooperation, we learned to solve problems through innovation. While you found stability through consensus, we discovered strength through diversity. While you advanced through shared knowledge, we grew through necessity. Admiral Rebecca Torres stepped forward, her presence commanding immediate attention. My name is Admiral Torres, Commander of Earth's Defense Fleet. I believe you have been experiencing some irregularities in your monitoring systems recently. A ripple of unease passed through the chamber. The connection between humanity and the recent disturbances was no longer theoretical. We have been conducting what we call a silent audit of galactic civilization. We needed to understand not just your capabilities, but your weaknesses, your blind spots, and your assumptions about how advanced species should behave. Dr. Vasquez stood and activated a holographic display that appeared above the delegation area. The image showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy, but with details that made several council members lean forward in alarm. This is the galaxy as we see it, not just the inhabited systems and trade routes that appear on your charts, but the hidden networks, the secret facilities, the surveillance systems, and the power structures that actually control galactic civilization. The display zoomed in on specific sectors, revealing installations that were supposed to be classified, communication networks that were thought to be secure, and resource flows that were meant to be invisible. We have spent the last 6 months learning about you, just as you once learned about us. The difference is that we did so without announcing our intentions or asking permission. Chancellor Zix found his voice, though it carried less authority than usual. What you're describing amounts to espionage on a galactic scale. Such actions could be considered an act of war. Ambassador Chen's expression didn't change, but there was something in her eyes that suggested she was not intimidated by the threat. We prefer to think of it as a comprehensive cultural exchange. You studied us for decades before making your decision. We simply returned the favor in a more efficient time frame. But why? Councillor Thrain asked, his voice carrying genuine curiosity rather than accusation. What did you hope to accomplish? Understanding, Sarah replied simply. You rejected us because you believed we were too primitive, too violent, too individualistic to contribute to galactic society. But what if the qualities you saw as weaknesses were actually exactly what the galaxy needed? The holographic display shifted to show a different kind of map, one that tracked criminal activity, corruption, and systemic inefficiencies across the Federation. The scale of the problems was staggering, revealing a galactic civilization that had achieved surface peace at the cost of deeper stability. Your Federation has been stable for millennia, but stability is not the same as health. You have eliminated war, but you have not eliminated exploitation. You have achieved consensus, but you have not achieved justice. You have shared knowledge, but you have not shared power. Admiral Torres stepped forward again. The disruptions you've been experiencing are not attacks. They are corrections. We have been quietly addressing problems that your systems were either unable or unwilling to solve. Pirate fleets that plagued innocent traders, criminal organizations that exploited vulnerable populations, corrupt officials who abused their positions. And we did it all without firing a single shot, Dr. Vasquez added, because while you were right that we have a history of conflict, you were wrong about what we learned from it. We didn't just learn how to fight, we learned how to win without fighting. The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. Humanity hadn't just been rejected from the Federation. They had been studying it, understanding it, and quietly demonstrating that they could address its problems more effectively than the Federation itself. Chancellor Zix's voice carried a note of something that might have been fear. What do you want? Ambassador Chen smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. The same thing we wanted 6 months ago. Membership in the Galactic Trade Federation. The difference is that now we're not asking as supplicants, hoping for acceptance. We're offering as equals, seeking partnership. And if we refuse again, Representative Korthok asked, his metallic voice sharp with challenge. Then we continue as we have been, Sarah replied with perfect calm. Solving problems, maintaining peace, and demonstrating that there are other ways to achieve galactic stability. The choice is yours, but understand that the galaxy has already begun to change. The question is whether you want to be part of that change or simply observe it from the outside. The vote when it came, was unanimous. Not because the Council was convinced of humanity's worthiness, but because they had already witnessed humanity's capabilities. The galaxy had indeed changed, and the species that had walked out in silence 6 months earlier had returned with a quiet strength that could not be ignored. As the session concluded and the formal documents were signed, Councillor Thrain approached Ambassador Chen with a question that had been troubling him. In all our years of evaluating species, we have never encountered one that could accomplish what you did in 6 months. How is it possible? Sarah Chen looked at him with the same calm expression she had worn throughout both sessions. You spent millennia learning to work together. We spent millennia learning to work alone. Both approaches have their strengths, but only one of them teaches you to see solutions that others miss. She paused, looking around the chamber where humanity had been rejected and then accepted within the span of 6 months. You asked us to prove we were civilized. We did. We just proved it in our own way. As the human delegation prepared to leave the Grand Assembly Hall for the second time, the atmosphere was very different. This time, they were not departing in silence, but in triumph. A quiet triumph that had been earned not through aggression or demands, but through patience, capability, and the kind of strength that only comes from learning to survive in isolation. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity's greatest gift was not their technology or their innovation, but their ability to find hope in the darkness and turn rejection into redemption. They had been laughed at, dismissed, and sent away, but they had returned not as conquerors, but as healers, ready to share the lessons learned in their long journey through the stars. The Council had laughed at humanity. Now they would learn from them.